In August of 2025, India's parliament passed a law outlawing real money gaming, the apps where you pay cash to enter fantasy cricket, rummy, or poker contests and can win cash back. Not ordinary video games, the paid kind. One industry estimate put that business at $3.2 billion a year. PRS Legislative Research, which tracks Parliament's work, counted 29 minutes spent discussing and passing the bill, 6 in the lower house, 23 in the upper. And by the next day, the biggest platforms had switched their paid games off themselves. The law would not take effect for months. They didn't wait. To understand why, you need to understand what these companies were actually selling. On the surface, they sold fantasy cricket, rummy, and poker played for money. But underneath, their real product was a legal position. For decades, Indian courts had treated games of skill differently from gambling, and the industry's biggest formats had won case after case, establishing that they sat on the skill side of the line. That position was the legal basis separating their paid products from India's gambling bans, and it was worth billions. How big was the business standing on it? By one industry estimate, India's whole online gaming sector earned about $3.7 billion in 2024, and the real money part, the cash entry games, produced about $3.2 billion of it. Money games weren't just a corner of the Indian gaming market, they were most of it. The companies were some of the most successful things Indian consumer technology had ever built. Dream11's parent was valued at $8 billion in its 2021 funding round, with revenue of roughly $750 million in its 2023 financial year, growing by 2/3 in a single year. It was preparing to go public. The legal foundation ran deep. Starting in the 1950s, India's Supreme Court drew a line between gambling and competitions that mostly depend on skill. Over the decades, that line held. Rummy was ruled a game of skill in the 60s, horse racing in the 90s, and in 2017, a high court ruled that Dream11's fantasy format was skill too, a decision the Supreme Court let stand. Now, to be fair, those wins were narrower than the industry liked to suggest. Specific games had won specific cases. That is not the same as every cash game being blessed nationwide, and the rules still varied from state to state. But it was enough certainty for billions to be invested in it. The first tremor came through tax. Starting in October of 2023, money gaming was taxed at 28%, charged on everything players deposited, not on the small fee the platform actually kept for itself. Before the change, the tax touched the platform's cut. After it, the tax touched every deposit, win or lose. When a state starts taxing the stake instead of the fee, it is telling you what it thinks of the stakes. The industry absorbed it, barely. Its backers warned the government of $2.5 billion in write-offs. Mobile Premier League cut 350 people, but the tax stayed. The companies challenged it in court, and the major platforms kept operating. 2023 was treated as a survivable shock. But 2 years later came the law itself, and it was blunt. Running a money gaming service, up to 3 years in prison, a fine, or both. Moving its payments, the same. And for both of those, police can arrest without a warrant, and bail is not automatic. Even simply advertising one of these games is an offense. But the part that actually ended the industry is 12 words long, sitting inside a definition. The law defines an online money game as one played for stakes, quote, irrespective of whether such game is based on skill, chance, or both. That single definition switches on 3 bans at once. The game cannot be offered, it cannot be advertised, and no bank or payment company may move its money. 70 years of courtroom wins over skill, and this law does not overturn a single one of them. It simply makes the question irrelevant. This then explains the shutdowns. Dream11 turned off paid contests the day after the vote. Mobile Premier League and several others followed within days. The bans themselves would only take hold when the act formally commenced in May of 2026. From that day on, no bank could process the money, and no advertisement could legally run. So the shutdowns came months early, but the deadline they answered to was already on the calendar. What followed split the industry's 2 giants down the middle. Dream Sports lost 95% of its revenue, by its own chief executive's account, and chose to redeploy most of its people into its other businesses rather than cut them. though more than 100 left in the months that followed. Mobile Premier League went the other way. It cut 60% of its India team and turned to its markets abroad. Same law, same week, opposite answers. Several challengers have taken the law to the Supreme Court, and as of this recording, the case is still pending. The two giants are not among them, Dream 11 and Mobile Premier League. Two of the industry's largest and best-funded companies stayed out. The case exists, but what is striking is who decided not to put their name on it. The government's side deserves a fair hearing, because it is not a straw man. Its estimate, presented to Parliament, was that players had lost more than $2 billion on these platforms. This figure came without a publicly disclosed methodology, and this should be accounted for as well. But the far deeper point stands without the number. Whether a game rewards skill does not change whether a family can lose a month's income on it. Then, in May of 2026, India's Supreme Court handed down two rulings in older cases, and they cut straight through the industry's remaining hopes. The first said that even if a game is a game of skill, betting on it is a separate thing entirely, and the state can ban that bet. The second said the tax on full stake value stands, including for the years already under dispute. Neither ruling was about the 2025 ban itself. That challenge is still waiting, but much of its original legal foundation is now gone. And here's the strange part. Ordinary video games in India, the kind with no cash entry, grew 17% in 2025. The total number of players fell from about 609 million to 555 million as the betting users dropped away. And by one estimate, a third of the people who used to play for money did not stop. They moved to offshore betting sites, which the law does not cover on paper, but which are far harder to police, and where a player's practical protection is dramatically weaker. So, what did decades of courtroom victories actually prove? Well, they proved that the games required skill, but they never proved that skill came with a right to sell the bet attached to it. Those were always two different claims, and much of the industry was financed on the assumption that winning the first meant winning the second. 29 minutes in Parliament and 12 words of definition ended that assumption. India is still playing. A lot of the wagering never stopped. It simply moved somewhere else, harder to see.